Hello guys, I'm Abhishek. I'm a second year aeronautical student in Manipal. I'm also the subsystem head of the ADCS subsystem in Parikshit. Today with us we have Adheesh Boratkar, who has been a member of our payload subsystem and has also been our systems engineer. So Adheesh, can you tell us a bit more about yourself?
Um, Thanks, Abhishek. Very happy to connect with you and everyone at Parikshit. I studied in Manipal from 2011 to 2015. And from my first year itself, I was associated with Parikshit. As you mentioned, I started off in the payload subsystem. Uh, that time, uh, where the satellite was at, we were sort of trying to define a payload. So we used to have a payload that was to do with radiation measurement initially, and that got scrapped. And from there to finding this thermal imaging payload, I was a part of the team that did that. Then I was involved with the electrodynamic tether payload as well, and finally got to lead the team as a systems engineer. And wow, that's a haze. I don't even know what I did then. But after graduating from Manipal, I joined this company called Team Indus. They were at that time one of India's most ambitious aerospace startups. They were the only Indian entry into this global contest called the Google Lunar X Prize, which was a challenge for a private company to land on the moon and send back HD video. So it was very exciting working there. I got to work under the direct supervision of retired ISRO scientists. And after working there for 2 years, I did a master's in electrical engineering at the University of Toronto. And now I'm working for an aerospace startup here. They are called Kepler Communications. We make small satellites for communication applications. So we have 5 Ku band satellites in orbit right now, and many more to be launched soon.
That sounds like really cool, amazing work from student satellite teams to moon rovers to telecommunication satellites. All of this sounds like you had a keen interest in aerospace. So can you tell us where did this interest come from? What generated your initial kick towards aerospace?
So yeah, like looking back, it looks like all the dots have like sort of connected themselves, as if it was meant to be. But uh, as I was going through this journey, there was no saying that I would there was nothing for me to believe that I would be doing what I do today. So the first time my interest in aerospace got initiated was in 2007, when the International Astronautical Congress, or the IAC, was held in Hyderabad. And it was then when ISRO announced that if Indian students can build a satellite, they would provide a free launch. And back then, I was still in school, and I remember my father showing me that article, and it's like, hey, think about this. And I was like, what? Satellites? Like, those are complicated things. Like, what do you even mean by think about this? Like, this is totally, out of my league. But then when I joined Manipal, I found out about Parikshit, which was a student group that had just started about a year ago at that point. And they had their like a preliminary review with people from ISRO. So like Dr. B. N. Suresh, etc., had visited Manipal. The team was in place. We didn't have the funding yet, but I was like, yes, this is what I want to do. And yeah, I guess the interest began there, and then Parikshit, Team Indus sort of just added on to my skill set, if I might say. And being in aerospace is always very exciting. Like you guys must be totally aware, right? Like like the problems we face are so unique that you can't generally just look up the answer in a book. Even like there's been times I remember when we were working like for searching this new payload, we would not understand certain things in an article, and if we Google that phrase, Google would send us back to that article. So uh, and the satisfaction you get after overcoming such difficulties is immense. And the final satisfaction is knowing that something that you have worked on is orbiting the earth right now. So I think that is what keeps me motivated.
We hope to feel that joy very soon. We in Parikshit are very close to launching our own satellite, which you worked on for so long. So
Yeah, like there's like hundreds of people who have worked on Parikshit who are waiting to experience that joy. So a lot of pressure on your shoulders, to see
no
it
pressure.
through.
So it almost sounds like it was love at first sight. You came to Manipal and you learned about Parikshit and you decided you wanted to join.
I mean, to be honest, I knew about Parikshit even before coming to Manipal. Like there was this phase when I knew that I'm going to Manipal, and I started looking up, okay, what are the student clubs in Manipal? What are activities happening there and things like that. And that's when Parikshit first came up. So yeah, it was somewhat, uh, I don't know, I have never used the word love at first sight before, but I was definitely very excited from day one and wanted to be a part of this team.
How were the student projects back then? Like there must have been other exciting projects other than Parikshit that you must have been interested in.
So Formula Manipal used to be the biggest project back then, I would say. And because they had like a fancy workshop, they had a car that would go around campus. You could like physically see it. And Parikshit back then was not very well known. It was just a year old. We didn't have anything to show. We didn't have this lab. We didn't have a ground station, nothing. So yeah, I would say that back then Formula Manipal was the biggest thing. Then there was Aero MIT, and I think there was a Baja team as well. I think they were called Team Manipal Racing, and there was Robo Manipal. So these things did exist back then, but nothing seemed as complex and as challenging and as exciting as Parikshit.
That is true even today. Even today, like going on the campus late at night at 1 a.m. coming back to our hostel, there are electric bikes roaming around the campus now. That is very exciting. But the lab is the lab. The Parikshit lab is beautiful. You must have been you must have been part of the team when that lab was slowly being set up, right? Are there any memories that stand out from back then, from the initial days of Parikshit?
Yeah, like I remember the time when we did not have a lab. Like we didn't have a specific dedicated room for Parikshit. It would be just like classrooms in MLH that we would use after, in the evening after classes. From then to get like the first permanentish space that we got was in AB5. The instrumentation and control department had a room on one of the floors there, and then we got this lab, which is like a more permanent thing, and it is like a proper ESD facility. It has a clean room. Uh, yes, I was in the team when the lab was being set up, but I did not have much to do with setting up the lab. There were people who spent a lot of time making sure that we got the funding and that all the specifications were right to get that lab set up. I think Kanika Garg was one of the most instrumental people in securing that funding. Then uh, Shrikant from my batch, who used to lead the structures, thermals and mechanisms team. Then he was, I think he stayed back during one of the vacations and just saw to it that the lab got completed, in the right manner. Yeah. And but it was exciting. Like we got to learn so much that is not typically taught in the classroom. Like simple things like reading up the first data sheet of an electronic component. I did that when I was in Parikshit, and all the like most of the practical experience that I had. I mean, I managed to get my first. I managed to get my first job only because of Parikshit. Like it was a conference happening in Bangalore where I was invited to represent Parikshit, and that is where I met my future employers. And had it not been for that job at Team Indus, getting this job that I have right now with Kepler Communications would have sort of been much harder, I guess, or I probably wouldn't have even been inclined to apply for it. I don't know. But I wouldn't definitely stand out. So Parikshit has given a lot more, I guess.
Yeah. So okay. So though Parikshit was such a big part of your college life, do you have any other memories of your life outside the lab? Do you have anything that reminds you of Manipal other than Parikshit?
Yes, of course. Like life did not end at Parikshit. So sure. I mean, I have visited Manipal a couple of times after graduating as well. And what my experience was that Manipal, although I mean you have memories associated with different places, it is a lot more about the people that you were with at Manipal. So it doesn't feel the same. Like even if like the places don't change, although I know a lot of places have changed since I graduated. Like Tiger Circle has changed. There's no more Circle I hear. Kamat Circle is gone, and Manipal has changed. But even when it hadn't changed, it did not feel the same because the people that I was there with were not there. And at that time when I visited, Parikshit was the only sort of place that sort of felt, sort of like at home. In like, even though everything had changed, I knew that lab, and when I walked into that lab, the faces that I saw there, I did not know all of them, but the moment we got talking, we were talking about the same thing. So it does sort of like my only connect to Manipal right now. My strongest connect to Manipal would be Parikshit, I would say. But yes, there was a lot of life outside of Parikshit. I did a lot of fun stuff, some stupid stuff with my friends from my first year batch, and then like once I got into my section in my branch, even, lots of fun memories, lots of trips that we took, and yeah, good memories from Manipal. Yeah,
So
and
yeah.
like some of the greatest friends I made at Manipal were also through Parikshit. Like today, like although I am so far away from home in North America, like any major North American city I decide to visit, there is someone from the team that I have worked with who's very likely to be there. And these people are doing incredible things. Like so many people have doctorates now. A lot of people working for like the top companies doing most challenging technical work. Some of them even working for some space agencies in Europe. So it was like a great network that I cultivated at in Manipal, but especially within Parikshit, because there is a certain joy in working on a shared goal without sort of any monetary or other incentive. Like anyone who's at Parikshit is there because they want to do it, they like doing it. There is no salary that you get at the end of the month to make you keep doing it. But so the bonds you form there are very unique and sort of different from the bonds I formed later in my professional life. So you guys, like, I'm happy for you guys that you're part of Parikshit and you're getting to uh, go through this, I guess.
You are our motivation. I don't know. I know you know it, but I don't know how big of a motivation you are to us. We see all of our alumni doing so many crazy things in the world. A lot of them doing PhDs, a lot of them in universities and companies all around the world. And we hope to see ourselves, live up to you, the legacy that you left behind.
No, for
It's
sure. And we are always happy to help you guys out. Like when I was applying for my master's, I could like reach like three or four people at top universities to get them to review my SOPs and like get advice from them on, like first what just to know that what a master's looks like. What do graduate studies look like abroad? What does it actually mean to be a part of such a program? And then to get advice on how to apply and improve my chances of acceptance, etc. But yeah, so we are here for you guys, and we are really proud of the work that you guys are doing because each of us made our contributions and we had to move on, and that's the nature of life. You can't, you know, I mean, you have to move on essentially.
And as you mentioned, you did move on to very crazy and amazing things after you left Parikshit. But even while in Parikshit, you had some very crazy experiences. You did a ZeroG flight, right? Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Oh yes. It was really a great experience, and I still think like that's probably the epicest thing I have done in my life, and there's probably nothing I can top it off with, sort of. So I just happened to be at the right place at the right time. That was most of it, because I was the one working on the tether integration with the satellite at that point. Prior to me, the initial contact with Sabre Astronautics, the Australian company who manufactures the tether, was set up by Aditya Palta. And then it was time for him to move on, and he took up other responsibilities. And I was the one who was actually doing the day-to-day work on the tether assembly. Um, I got to travel to Australia for a conference to present a paper on that with my teammates Pallavi, and it was then when I first met Jason, who was the director of Sabre Astronautics, and then they applied for they put together a grant proposal, and they applied to the NASA Flight Opportunities Program. So this is the reduced gravity flight program. So they have these parabolic flights on which they train astronauts and also carry out the experiments that they later on want to carry out on ISS. The first trial of those happens on these flights. So their proposal got accepted, and they invited one person to represent Parikshit, and the team nominated me to be that one person because I was the one working on that assembly. So I got to travel to Houston. Uh, I got to be in three zero gravity flights, and like each of the flight, the way it happens is they first emulate Martian gravity, then lunar gravity, and then zero. So you have 5 Martian parabolas, 5 lunar parabolas, and then 30 zero gravity parabolas. And the way this flight works is it follows the shape of a parabola, so it like accelerates upwards, and at that time you face up to 2 times the force of gravity, and then at some point they just turn off the engines, and then with the momentum that you have, you continue to go up a little bit, and then you start falling down. And in this period, when the plane is like free falling under gravity, you are inside the plane also free falling under gravity, so effectively you experience no gravity. And then as the plane is falling, they turn on the engines to slow it down because you don't want to crash in the ocean. And that is when again you start feeling gravity. And like I have these vivid memories from that. So there are these blue suit people from like, so there are these NASA employees in blue suits. All of us are given green suits, and they make a call. They say feet down, because you could be floating anyway, but just before they start decelerating, they want you to orient your feet down, because if you don't do that, you're just going to fall on your head. And like suddenly you fall, and it's an amazing feeling. It like feels sort of like swimming without any effort. And
Got to experience life on the moon. You got to experience how it must be on the surface of the Mars. This is crazy. This is the dream for any BTech student. So out of all of these experience that you had in Parikshit, which was your what was your biggest takeaway? What did you learn the most from Parikshit that you carry from day-to-day life?
there are so many things that I learned. Like it's hard to say one what would be one biggest takeaway, but I can share a few. Uh, so first off, I learned that if you want to do something, you can do it. You just have to figure out how. And the internet is such an amazing resource that you could like we literally started building satellites by googling things, right? And it is possible. So that was one big takeaway, that no matter how complicated the problem is, you can break it down into simpler problems. And I mean, the whole concept of having subsystems and then a whole system engineering team looking at the overall system. So we want to make a satellite, but we break it down into subsystems. So that is one important skill, that a complex problem, you can distill it down into smaller parts and then work towards solving each of those smaller parts. The other thing is, no matter how complicated a thing looks, you can always look at it from the first principles. Like even the tether mechanism, there were these MATLAB scripts and crazy simulations to figure out what the rate of descent would be. But you could explain it in a very simple way, saying that a conductor in a changing magnetic field, like if you have a conductor in a changing magnetic field, there will be a current induced in it. And if you have a current carrying wire in any magnetic field, it will experience a force. It's basically these two concepts, simple concepts, that ultimately result in the crazy fancy simulations and calculations and the whole thing about how the tether can actually deorbit a satellite. So looking at something big and trying to see what the fundamentals are. The third thing I learned was also about like people skills. So how do you keep a team motivated without a monetary incentive, without a course credit, without anything else? How do you interact with teams? How do you talk to people? Like there are times when things get very frustrating, and if you lose your temper, if someone loses their temper, it just goes downhill from there. You have to figure out how to come together as a team and understand each other's perspectives, see what the real bottlenecks are, and how you can go beyond them. So yeah, I think these 3 or 4 things are like what specifically what I learned at Parikshit, which even today in my day-to-day life, they are very useful and relevant.
As you mentioned, times can get hard sometimes, and especially during COVID, it's getting harder and harder to keep ourselves motivated to work. So given all your experience, what advice would you give to the current team?
I would say, like, I don't know how, because I don't know this, I don't know the depth of the specific issues that you're facing, but I could only look back at the challenges we faced and what we did. So what helped us really was to take a step back and look at the bigger picture and see where the problem lies. Like it's easy to lose track of the bigger picture in your day to day. So like Anshuman, who was a part of our management team at that point, senior to me, like one day he walked into our Sunday meetings and he said, guys, just think about this. Imagine that on live TV, you are seeing this countdown. You have a couple of people from your team at the launch site. You have a couple of people from your team at ISRO's ISTRAC, where they track things. And then you have some people in your ground station, and the rest of the team is on standby here as Parikshit is on that rocket waiting to be launched. When the countdown goes through, you see the rocket take off, and you hear that Parikshit has been deployed. You still have no signal, but you know that the satellite has been ejected from the PSLV. And then you wait and you hear that first beacon from your satellite. You get its telemetry. You get to know what its battery status is. You get to know at what rates the satellite is, moving, like tumbling at that point, basically. You know where your ADCS is, at what state it is. You know if your satellite's solar panels have been deployed or not. Or maybe you don't get this data in the first telemetry. You have to wait for another pass, 6 hours, 12 hours, and then it will come. And when you think about this, like that just like this whole thought experiment just charged up everyone in that room. And like right now, I don't even remember what question you had asked me. I got so lost in this train of thought. But that is the big picture that we are working towards, right? And of course, like we need to be able to track our issues on like our day-to-day issues and keep a record. Okay, this day this problem was flagged. How long did it take us to fix it? What did we do to fix it? What worked, what did not work? And once an issue has been solved, it also helps to take a look back at what worked, what did not work, and what can we learn from it going forward. So yeah, that would be my advice for the current team, I guess.
It happens with us too. This dream of watching your satellite launch, with the emotional attachment that you have to the satellite. When you think about it, even I forget everything else that is going on in my life.
Yeah,
This
like
is a big dream for all of us. So, what advice would you give to a fresher in Manipal who's also interested in space exploration, as you were?
my first advice would be to not get afraid, because it does feel overwhelming, and it is easy to get overwhelmed, basically. So just if you're passionate about something, follow up, like read more about it, see what you can practically do to learn something more. And Parikshit is of course a great platform to actually get hands-on experience on hardware that would be flying to space. And as we have matured from like a team which was conceptualizing a satellite to getting a preliminary design to getting a proper engineering model to building a qualification model, and soon we'll have the flight model and we will fly, the team's role will also change, right? Like more and more focus will be on operations, more focus will be probably on analyzing the data, and then I hope there would be focus on building a new satellite, a better satellite from all the learnings that we have had, and also taking into consideration how the world has changed. Like it's been almost a decade, right? I joined Manipal in 2011. It's 2020 now. So there's definitely, like, I think Parikshit is a great way to get real hands-on real quick while you're still an undergraduate student, because such opportunities are not available to most people. And but regardless of if you join Parikshit or not, like just don't give up is my only advice. If you're interested in space exploration, explore, take small steps, try building model rockets, try just follow some interesting people on the internet, like follow Chris Hadfield, for instance. He's a cool guy.
Chris Hadfield is the best.
Yeah, so there is so many avenues to pursue your interests in space exploration. There are great courses on Coursera and edX which talk about space engineering, space systems, and connect with Manipal alumni who are doing something relevant, get advice from them, I would say. And just even if you're not a part of the team, drop by the lab, see what people are doing there. And yeah, that would be my advice to freshers. Like,
Well, Adheesh bhai, this was a lot of good advice and this was very fun talking with you. We will stay in contact, but thanks a lot for coming and talking with us today.
thank you so much, Abhishek. It was great for me to even like for me as well to connect back with Parikshit, and I'm happy to keep in touch. And all the best.
Yeah. Okay. Outro done.
Yeah, that was good. Chalo, I'll also appear on the screen and I'll stop recording.